next tank they developed from that became PZ-68. It had got a number of little changes on it compared to the first one. But what we were looking at there, it's a British gun on it, that famous L7 105mm gun. You've got a cast armoured turret, cast armoured hull, but underneath all that as well, it's quite a narrow, pretty narrow, and they also made sure as well that it got very sensitive steering, because you don't want to be going over the edge of the road here and there. Other vehicles we've got coming on, we've got here the Gepard, which is an anti-aircraft system that's been put together there. It was done by the German military. We've got a Centurion driving by that's in the process of restoration. So it's funny how it was quite an important feature they wanted, and Gepard good anti-drone capability, so again we're back to the stage with first weapon system on. Some Gepards have also been sent out. There's also not flying around there, one of the versions, the M8 high-speed made after the war using the Walker Bulldog running gear there. This one, the M8 version, and you can see it's basically a tracked lorry that can tow heavy guns, but also put in the back there things like ammunition, etc. So it can get to places that other vehicles can't always get to if they're towing a bit of kit with them. Goes into service in about 1950, and they towed in them those long Tom 155 artillery pieces, but also American called Sky Sweeper, and they were towed behind these M8 tractors as well. Engines up the front, which is slightly different to some of the other high-speed tractors where you can see their crews almost sit either side of the engine there. We got Leopards come back on, skills and the manpower of West Germany to help defend, so they reformed the Bundeswehr. They used some famous Wehrmacht officers from the Second World War to help reform their military, and they also effective way of protecting themselves on the battlefield. Now the whopping American flag there is being flown from the M60 tank, and the M62 starting a design process that doesn't actually get very far. The M47, then the M48 tank. The Americans basically, after World War II, nuclear weapons now, will they really need tanks ever again? And then of course what happened in 1950, the Korean War kicked off, and literally American World War II tanks have been taken off fleet to be sent out to fight in Korea. And that just got bigger is the M60. And it's really the last generation where the Americans were building a big cast armoured hull. It's got a cast armoured turret. They make a lot of them, which is why there's a lot of M60s still around. You've got them in service still with Turkey, with Greece. Some of them are Greece being exported, some with holes cut in them that people weld back up the holes and put them on display again. And the glass of the mine is vented up the sides of the vehicle, so it's got like a rounded or a V-shaped hull. What you don't want if you drive over a big mine is all the glass of the mine to be captured underneath the belly of your vehicle, because that can flip you over, which is not what you want. So they're disappointed with the American tanks because they didn't really seem to do much in the way of advancing the technology in any way. But they were made in big numbers. There's about 15,000 of those. Stopped making them in about 1983, and in American service, like so many tanks, they go through a lot of upgrades, a lot of ways of improving the vehicles, new engines, new sighting systems, etc. in the arena by what a lot of these tanks we've been seeing were going to go up against. The famous Soviet, this one's a T-7.
It was only going to be built if it was basically war was going to be declared. Somehow, the manufacturers of the T-72 got around that, and by the early 1970s they're building this very sophisticated little kit.
If you look at it, you can see, number one, it's low profile.
Diesel onto its exhaust, and that creates that smoke screen. A lot of tanks have that capacity now, and it means you can basically cover yourself with a smoke screen, so you're harder for the enemy to pick up.
But it has a 5mm gun on it, and it's what's called a small bore gun.
Stuck, or maybe swamped, so they ended up V stands for. They were getting a bit long in the tooth. Britain had introduced the Centurion tank, much heavier tank, so they weren't really up to the job. So they took some of the older Centurions and built these penthouses on the top. And you can see their wind block on the front for pushing off landing craft. It can go into about 6 litres of water, and sealed up, normally on there would be approved for breathing, water, fixed tow ropes, and recover drowned vehicles. Second Centurion coming on there, we've got the armoured recovery vehicle, and these were basically Centurion, earlier model Centurion tanks, probably Mark II. Ended up building quite a number of these. They were sold off as well, you know, we sold about 50 of them to the Swiss. Other countries use them as well. And they put an extra engine in the Panzer engine put in there as well, so that could pull anything, enormous weight. Someone would have to get out to hitch it to the broken down tank, but it means you can recover vehicles from on the battlefield. Just a little bit of steam blowing off the back there. Well, there's another Chieftain that's going to have to need recovering at some point. BARVs like this Centurion, about a dozen of them done. There's still a number of them left, some in private ownership, some in museums collection. Number down to the Leopard, so they were carried on maintenance for them.
And they were used in their original role, you know, pushing off landing craft.
Getting stuck in boggy ground and ended up busting their spline shaft, so that they ended up having to be recovered themselves after a certain amount of time.
In the Centurion ARV, you can see the back there, it's got a ground anchor.
Plus, let alone on top of that all the development costs, etc. Not cheap tanks are. Again, the debate that goes on all the time, do we really need them in the age of modern warfare? We've got drones. Pretty much every army that's ever got rid of its tanks. So, for example, the Canadian army, they got rid of their Leopard 100. So kit tends to be sort of not exactly downgraded, but it's passed on before it completely goes out of service. The American Marines ended up by being gifted the M60
You can see the American
user. And in America, one of their other forces they've got is the National Guard.
and they're all.
So we gave Chobham armour. It was first used, amazingly, it was going to be used on the Spear tank that we were building for the Tsar of Iran. That programme, as I mentioned, was cancelled, so it ended up being used on Challenger 1 for Britain the first time, but even before then, you see the